Void Emissaries are the only real interesting ones, but most people tend to skip them. So it doesn't seem like there is a real push towards changing the MDI or the Mythic Plus meta, because the one emissary that could have changed it is probably going to be ignored. Hello guys, welcome to my new video, and today I'm going to be answering a question that a lot of people are interested. They keep asking me about the balance of DPS, the balance of tanks, the balance of healers coming into patch 8.2, specifically maybe in Mythic Plus environment. And this video will cover my predictions for tanks that are going to be strong in Mythic Plus in 8.2, the DPS are going to be strong, and to some extent healers. But keep in mind, I have a dedicated video for healers already, so if you're interested in an in-depth analysis of my predictions for healers, check that out. There's a specific video for that. So first of all, coming in 8.2, there's a couple of changes that are happening, and you have to be aware of factors that can balance or change Mythic Plus meta, and that is essences and the new Beguiling Mythic Plus affix. And before we go into those, you have to also be aware that this is going to be covering high-end Mythic Plus, possibly MDI level comps. So you do not need these classes, these tanking or DPS or healing classes, to get your plus 10 done. Keep this in mind and keep your mind open when making those plus 10 groups in Mythic Plus. Now, first of all, essences. It is kind of relatively easy for me to make predictions for Mythic Plus classes, because at least at the start, there's only a couple of essences you can really get. And also you can only really unlock one slot. Once you get neck level 55, you'll get a second slot, and once you get 65, which is going to be a long time at least for a lot of people, you'll get to open a third slot of your essences, and the combinations might interact really nicely and synergize. But at the moment there's only really one or two, and a lot of classes are going with the blood of the enemy essence. So it's safe to say, at least for the starting Mythic Plus balances, that hey, a lot of these classes are going to be using this essence, which is gotten from PvP Battlegrounds. It's very strong for Mythic Plus as well because of its AoE nature. Outside of that, you can also see that Blizzard does not want certain essences impacting specific classes more than others. And it's very, very evident in Holy Paladin Glimmer of Light nerfs in terms of Vision of Perfection. It is even more evident with the Memory of Lucid Dream nerfs for Fire Mages, because he was interacting and synergizing with Fire Mages more than other specs, and Blizzard nerfed it. So if there are going to be certain specs that become overpowered because of essences, Blizzard will probably end up nerfing that. So the balance might still stay similar. So this video, actually, before people are gonna be watching it and stuff like that, the balance of the Mythic Plus meta does not seem to change all that much. Keep that in mind. Again, Beguiling is another new Season 3 Mythic Plus affix, which is going to heavily impact how Mythic Plus comps are going to be built for it. In terms of Beguiling, Beguiling has got a lot of nerfs recently, and specifically to do with the Reflect ads, and I'm going to refer to them Enchanted Emissaries, the Reflect ads. They have been kind of nerfed. All of a sudden it only takes 20 seconds to disappear, down from 30 seconds. It is very easy to put your healer to kind of handle them, because in Resto Jude case, they can just Moonfire this ad, push it back, push it back, push it back. And basically Resto Jude can really take care of this really easy, because Resto Jude has Moonfire, which is a ranged ability, has no cooldown. So it's very easy for Resto Jude to deal with this. Emissary of the Tides, which is basically the CC ad, or at least around it, the ads cannot be CC'd. This ad used to be, at least at the start of PTR, used to be handled by just getting a hard CC on it. So a rogue could sap it, etc., and just keep it there and pull all the mobs around it back and nuke it down. Now Blizzard kind of said crown control duration is now capped at 8 seconds per application, but there's no diminishing return. So you can use as many CC as you can, but it is not going to last more than 8 seconds. So basically, again, another high advantage to druids, and especially Resto Druids, Entangling Roots. You can just basically cast Entangling Roots every 8 seconds on this mob and keep it in place. Entangling Roots does not have a cooldown, and the reason why I say Resto Druids are great for it, because you don't want to assign a DPS to handle this, because they're going to lose out a lot of damage. While Resto Druid can just, for example, Moonfire Enchanted Emissaries to push them back, keep casting Entangling Roots on the Emissary of the Tides to keep them in place, while having Sunfire on the ads that need to die, and also having HOTS on targets that need to be healed up. Resto Druid MVP of any comp coming into 8.2. And that basically leaves DPS doing what they do best and nuking down adds. You can already see how strong, again, Resto Druids are going to become in 8.2 because of this crowd control that Druids possess. And again, the third emissary that I was really excited for because I felt it was going to change Mythic Plus balance a lot is the Void Touched emissary, which is the Shadow emissary, which kind of needs to be nuked down, otherwise you will die because it does this massive cast. It cannot be stealth past, so rogues cannot do it with their shroud. But the thing is, majority of the time, most of the Mythic Plus groups are just gonna end up skipping it because it's not worth the effort to try and kill it. So using MDT tools, planning your route, making sure you get to skip this is probably going to be the best play. Meaning that you probably won't have to get strong single target to nuke it down. Now there are certain instances, and you can see pictures here in Shrine of the Storm and pictures in Temple of Satralis, where those Void Touched emissaries are placed bang in the middle of your main route and you cannot really skip past this. I can see that groups are probably not going to bother killing them, they're just going to run past and probably dead skip them. Because that's probably going to be better than killing these mobs, because they don't give you a specific buff, anything like that. They do seem to contribute towards the percentages, which was found out the last couple of weeks on PTR. So keep that in mind. At the start, they did not give any percentage, but right now they do. But it still doesn't seem to be good enough to actually bother killing these. So this is why I say that Mythic Plus balance is not going to change a whole lot. Even though Beguiling will slow down keys, it's not going to be Reaping. Reaping was super easy and super good towards AoE classes. Beguiling is still going to introduce, like, you know, pulling 2 or 3 trash bags at a time, getting your druid or whatever, handling these 2 mobs, and everyone else is going to nuke down. So AoE classes are still going to be very strong, depending on what is your group composition. So now let's talk about the tank balance and how that might be impacted by this Beguiling affix and things like that, and certain class changes that are happening in 8.2. First of all, the way that I'm going to be referring classes and their predictions, it's almost like gambling or making bets. Like, which class is going to be a safe bet for 8.2? Which class might be a wild card because it was so bad, but there's a chance of it coming into the top tier. So this is the way I'm going to be referring to classes, because at the end of the day, a lot of these predictions, it's kind of like a gamble. There's probably going to be a class balance happening before Mythic raid opening. So again, it is somewhat a gamble, but this is my predictions as of right now. So a safe bet right now, in my eyes, is going to be a Prot Warrior. Again, Prot Warrior has been nerfed in terms of the damage that it does. Anyone who mains a Prot Warrior knows that during Avatar, their DPS, their clapping capabilities were just obscene. A lot of the times, a really good Prot Warrior might be even topping DPS with an insane amount of damage. It was just absurdly broken, and let's be honest, anyone who plays a Prot Warrior knows this. They were so strong in terms of the damage that they dealt, and that has been nerfed quite a lot. Now, they still do a lot of damage, and a lot of people tend to forget that Prot Warrior is still a very solid tank in terms of the damage mitigation. They have Spell Reflect, which again is really strong on these tyrannical weeks, where maybe reflecting a boss ability is going to take a chunk of the boss's damage. It doesn't really show up on damage meters properly. So a lot of people tend to forget that Prot Warrior still has a lot of utility and is a very solid tank. And in my eyes, and by a lot of people, seem to think Prot Warrior is still going to be in a good position come 8.2. Now, a climber tank for me is going to be a tank that was already very solid for 8.15 and was already picked for a decent amount of high keys, and that is a Prot Paladin. There's nothing really changing in terms of Prot Paladin, but the utility that a Prot Paladin can do with its endless interrupts, with its utility talents that can really prevent like magic damage, can be cheese certain bosses. Prot Paladin has been a climber spec, and a lot of people would consider Prot Paladin to be coming into the top tier, possibly even becoming the best tank. We'll have to see with time, but it is a safe bet right now with a Prot Warrior and a Prot Paladin. Now, a wildcard tank, a tank that was pretty bad for a lot of the BfA, but has a chance of coming up into this top meta tier, in my eyes, is going to be a Guardian Druid. Now, I have no idea whether Guardian is going to be the best tank from the get-go in 8.2 or whether it's going to take a while to build it up. But I feel that Guardian has potential because of its recent changes that happened to Guardian Druid. Guardian got a lot of these utility abilities kind of made easier to use. The direct damage from Mangle and Trash has been increased by 15%, so maybe the damage that they deal is going to be somewhat really noticeable. So overall, I feel definitely Guardian has a certain spot in some of these top rankings. Now, the reason why I say wildcard, because I'm still not sure. I definitely have more hope in Guardian becoming a good Mythic Plus pick rather than Vengeance Demon Hunter. Believe me, there's not a lot of Vengeance Demon Hunters doing high Mythic Plus keys, but it seems that a lot of Vengeance tanks feel that the changes are not enough. It might not be enough to push them to the top tier. So overall, I feel the two prot tanks are really strong. Guardian has a chance of coming in there, but you never really know. These are my safe choices for tanking Spec in Mythic Plus. Now, if we look at melee DPS, and melee DPS balance in 8.15 was really terrible. Only basically 3 classes were really picked, and one of those classes were double picked, triple picked sometimes, and that includes rogues. Now, first of all, I still see rogues being very strong for Mythic Plus. Whether it's going to be outlaw or assassination, that's still up to debate. A top end Mythic Plus rogue will be capable of playing at least 2 of those specs because they're very popular. Second of all, Blizzard kind of indirectly nerfed Shroud by having a lot of the Mythic Plus dungeons require more percentage towards completion. So certain skips, you might be like, let's not Shroud here because we're not going to have enough percentages because the dungeon requires more. So there is some of this happening. I'm not sure whether Blizzard made this change that's going to impact everybody because of rogues, or whether they just wanted people to do more trash, which in my eyes doesn't feel that fun at all. But overall, I still feel Shroud is going to be very needed for those top MDI teams. Rogue is still looking a safe choice in terms of the melee, in terms of Mythic Plus, in terms of Beguiling and things like that. So again, Rogue is going to take one of the spots in melee team in my eyes. A second DPS I feel is going to be heavily picked as well. You can't really go wrong with the Havoc Demon Hunter. Havoc has always been really strong. Their utility is extremely good. They provide a lot of things. They provide the 5% magical damage increase. They have a stun. They have really good DPS for single target and AoE. And you can go on with Havoc Demon Hunters. Kind of provide a lot of things to the Mythic Plus team. And then you kind of have the same deal with the Windwalker Monk, because Windwalker was kind of picked in the MDI teams because it provided 5% melee damage, and MDI was all about melee damage and it felt really good. Now these charts that I'm showing to you right now, they're from 8.15, but I don't think a lot of things are going to change in terms of this, and I feel these charts are still a decent representation coming into 8.2. Now I feel that there are certain other melee classes that might make a comeback. For example, I feel DK is getting a lot of changes, especially Unholy as well is getting a lot of buffs, just straight up buffs for their single target DPS. And Unholy DK was already kind of a god of uncapped AoE. A lot of the times in MDI you would see when they were doing motherload keys where they would pull a lot of trash mobs, Unholy DK can break 100, 200, 300k DPS. Because they have uncapped AoE and it works really well. Now there is no reaping anymore, so there's not a lot of these mobs for DK to kind of cheese this. But overall, the buffs that happen to Unholy, or actually also Frost as well, might bring DKs as a favorable choice for a lot of these Mythic Plus runs. Again, somewhat of a wild card in my opinion. And another wild card can somewhat be referred to Warriors. Warriors have received a lot of changes, but I'm not even sure whether those changes are going to be good enough for them to come into this Mythic Plus high-end, top-end melee DPS slot. A lot of these teams might still end up going with double rogue, so I just mentioned these classes because they're getting substantial changes and it might impact the meta a bit more. But again, I feel Rogue, Demon Hunter, Windwalker Monk to some extent are still a very solid choice, and Unholy DK or DK in general and possibly Warrior might make a little bit of a comeback in 8.2. If I look in terms of range DPS, if you look at the charts in 8.15, you notice that range DPS balance was actually extremely good. I'm looking at 20 and up keys, and you can see that basically all of the range classes have their time in the sunlight where they can really do a lot of DPS. Possibly Warlocks kind of diminishing because Warlocks went through a lot of changes with Demo. Demo used to be, or Demonology used to be very overpowered with certain Azerite traits. those Azeroth traits were nerfed, so Warlocks were kind of dipping down. But overall, you can see the Beast Mastery Hunters, you can see Shadow Priest, Elemental Shamans, you can see Frost Mages, and you can see Balance Druids really doing well in these 20+ keys. And I kind of see that happening in 8.2 as well, possibly with Balance Druids maybe climbing a bit more, because Treants can be used to really kind of CC or take care of certain emissaries. You can have Treants usage on, you know, the reflecting ads, and basically they will just focus on the Treants. So it's interesting to see how Balance Druids are going to scale up in terms of Mythic plus viability, but all of the ranged classes really have a place in that Mythic plus high pushing team. And in terms of healers, I mentioned I didn't really want to go too much into it. Again, I don't see how Resto Druid is not going to be top tier, especially after I talked about the emissaries and how you can handle them. So this has been my kind of predictions. Again, I mentioned at the start of the video that not a whole lot of things are changing. I still feel that classes that were strong in 8.15 still looking strong in 8.2. Even though the Season 3 affix, Beguiling will slow down keys, AoE is still going to be needed. There's going to be a lot more ad control placed possibly on your healer, because you never really want your DPS to focus this and lose DPS, while the Resto Druid can do everything basically. So I can see how Resto Druid is going to be strong. I see how certain Mythic plus DPS classes or melee DPS classes might come in there. DK is looking kind of funny as well in terms of the changes that happen to them. In terms of ranged, I feel a lot of the ranged are viable and strong. Whether we'll see a different comp in MDI, I honestly don't know at this moment. For all you know, they could be running the exact same comp that they ran in MDI, that they will run in 8.2. So it's very hard to predict. Guys, thank you for watching this video. Remember, these are predictions. Remember that you don't need these comps for that +10. Keep your mind open when creating those +10 groups. Thank you guys for watching this, and I would love to hear your counter arguments, your thoughts about what is going to be strong in 8.2. And again, if you enjoyed the content, please do subscribe to the channel. It really helps out. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in my next video.